What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Sit Down Saturday. Today we're going to be talking about collecting intent. This is a conversation that's kind of needed to happen for a while here in regard to the ingredients and the ether of a lot of conversation, so I feel like it's finally time. Before we do, though, I want to do a quick recap. First of all, thanks to everybody that came out to NJCC, New Jersey Collectors Convention, this past weekend. Met a lot of great people, shook hands with a lot of great dudes. I don't want to, I hate naming people because ultimately I always leave somebody out and then I feel terrible. But I do want to give a shout out to Rodimus Primal. We had a great discussion at my table for like a half hour regarding franchises and character and integrity, and it was good. It was a good conversation. I valued it a lot. I want to give a special shout out to the Realm of Collectors. They hooked me up with the table there. They're a great group of guys. They have a Facebook group. They're very inclusive. I think highly of all of them. I'll try to have that link in the description for you. I'm doing this video very early once again because my weeks here are a little nuts for the rest of April. So I don't really know the response to a lot of stuff, but I'll try to recap what I can. I hope the lighting video went well. It was a lot of work in terms of lighting the shelves and doing the video. It's a hard thing to kind of express, to verbalize, to instruct, but I hope that I was able to do it somewhat efficiently where it made a little bit of sense. I'm sure there's better ways to do it than what I did it. I'm sure everybody let me know that in the comments, but I'm new to it too, you know? So I'm just sharing my experience and showing you what I did. I wanted to talk about the boxes thing for a bit, the Transformer boxes that Dummies did. I've had some thoughts about it ever since. For one, I wonder if, and feel free to leave your answers in the comments, I wonder if some of us that have a hard time letting go of boxes, like I did for many years, if it's because we're not quite married to the idea of keeping it all. If in the back of our minds there isn't this voice saying, one day you might be out. I can't help but think that maybe that plays a part. So feel free to let me know if you think maybe at all there's this element of it that you're constantly running the scenario through your head of one day getting rid of it. Also, what sprung to mind, I had a buddy of mine that was in college and I went and spent some time with him, and he didn't live on campus, he lived off campus. He had like a little apartment, and in the apartment he had the wall covered, like from ceiling to floor, wall to wall, of album insert covers. And it was amazing. Like, it was just nothing but all of the albums that he had, like the CD booklets, and it looked sharp as a tack. I wonder if there isn't something that someone could do regarding the kind of box art, maybe 3 in particular, JK, where it was like allowing the collector to turn the box into part of the collection. And not a part that's like tucked away in a closet, but a part that's on display in front of everyone, almost like a wallpaper. Something to think about. Also, the Beast Wars Megatron thing, pretty good figure. Couple issues and gripes I have, but it's a pretty good figure. A lot of people were telling me there's a way to lock the tail into the arm. I'm not sure they understand exactly what I'm saying there, but I hear you. On to the next one, I suppose. This lighting situation has really made me appreciate my Transformers a lot more, so I'm excited about that. And the Dummies have another display update video coming. Everybody liked that series. We have a part 3 to that coming, so look forward to that. And somebody did some animations that we'll talk about later, I think. Fingers crossed. So, let's talk about intent. This is where I think the wires really get crossed in terms of how people view other people's opinions regarding releases within this hobby, within this fandom. It comes down to intent. I've been watching the landscape and watching the culture kind of react to different things, and I'm like, I get this. It was the MMC RC that really clued me into it. So let me tell you what I see. On one side of the spectrum, I see the completionist. I see the person that wants everything, that loves Transformers in and out. My buddy Matthew Deluxe Baldwin with Hail Hasbro Reviews. He has a Transformers collection that could choke a T-Rex. Like, it's just everywhere. And they are, excuse the expression, elbow to elbow, nuts to butts. Just packed in this room. There's not room for a burp in this room. There's barely room for thought in that room. But he gets everything, pretty much. I think he's gotten a little bit more selective, but therefore he's kind of judging everything off of this baseline of a blend of all elements, which is interesting. It makes him a lot more forgiving, because if you're able to really appreciate the Rescue Bot, and I'm just using that as an example, and really able to appreciate a Fans Toys Dinobot, the average, the median of that is where he is. So he's able to kind of appreciate elements of all the different things and be critical of things that I necessarily wouldn't be critical of, or appreciate things that I wouldn't necessarily appreciate. The completionist is in for the franchise. It's in for the long haul, so to speak. There's also the player. The player is the person that actually pew-pews on the floor. That's not a judgment. That's just trying to give a description of what that is. A person that really legitimately plays with their figure. Which I'm actually in awe of. I can't do it anymore. I've told this story before on different platforms, but I had a moment when I was about 19 years old. I started buying a lot of figures that I wasn't buying before because I started making pretty good money. I was working on a loading dock. I was working with my hands, which is what I'm still doing. And I started spending my money. And I bought a lot of like Capcom versus Marvel stuff, some McFarlane stuff, some Witchblade figures, etc. And I remember I got them all out on my bed. I sat on my bed, crisscross applesauce as the kids say today, laid them all out, and I was like, I'm gonna have the epic battle with these things. It's time for the battle. It's been years since the battle, and it's time. I picked out, I separated them all by teams, I loaded them up with all their appropriate weapons and accessories, and I sat there ready to begin, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't get into it. And I bagged them up and I put them away, and I thought to myself, that's it. That's it. It wasn't until years later that I began to appreciate a different side of it, which we'll get to in a minute. But the person that still does that, what is he looking for, or she, to be fair, looking for within the fandom? Within the merchandise? Durability, posability, probably accessories. Do you remember being a kid in the 80s and having Star Wars figures and they weren't as much fun to play with as the G.I. Joe figures? What does that come down to? Posability. They weren't as durable though, right? The rubber bands would pop and so forth, but the posability and all the accessories made them a lot of fun to mess with. So they're looking for something very specific, even if they don't know it. And I think that's why sometimes they're more critical of other things that I may appreciate, because that's not necessarily what I'm looking for. And sometimes maybe I don't appreciate this as much as what they do because it's not what I'm looking for. So like, there's a balance there, right? What are brands that the player may appreciate? I'd put Hasbro in that category. I'd put SH Figuarts in that category. I think Takara Tomy can fit in that category. And I think Magic Square and MMC can weasel themselves in there as well. Let's move on to our next collector, the Tinkerer. This is a person that likes to fiddle. Take it down, mess with it, maybe transform it back and forth, get their fun and enjoyment from that, put it back on their shelf or back in their tote, wherever they may have it. What's important to this person? Durability. I would still say articulation. And I would go as far as to say probably gimmicks. Being able to press the button and flip the thing or whatever, a light up feature, etc. I also think that both for the player and the Tinkerer, that the fun factor is very important. So that needs to be noted as well. This is a person that's using it as a physical stimulus, basically, to have a moment of enjoyment. This person is going to appreciate the gimmicks a lot more than I do. I'm not really a gimmick person when it comes to toys. I'd prefer them be straightforward. But it comes down to intent, right? This person is getting the enjoyment of taking it down, manipulating it, interacting with it, and then placing it back. That's where the enjoyment comes from. That's why certain elements are more enticing. What brands do the Tinkerer appreciate? Takara Tomy, definitely. Hasbro, MMC, pretty much any import. I throw the Make Toys Fans Project Fans Hobby in there. NECA, off the top of my head. We have the photographer. The photographer is setting up elaborate situations to take pictures to sell a scene or a mood or an idea of the character. Shout out to Tentacles on Instagram. That dude kills his photography. He's probably my favorite toy photographer in the game. And what's funny is he does some pretty elaborate photographs, but the ones that I really appreciate are the subtle ones. I always tell him how much I appreciate his Ant-Man photography because he does like little, he had a broken iPhone and he had like the Ant-Man Marvel Legend like stepping on it and like causing the crack in the iPhone. Like it's just, that stuff I love. I think it's wonderfully clever and smart. But what is this person looking for? Articulation, sculpt, paint. These are the things that become important when you're selling a picture, and I mean that figuratively, to express something or a love or a passion for that character. If it looks like trash, it's no good. If you can't pose it, it's no good. And if it's not painted, it's never going to quite look as real or as cool within the photograph as it could. So that person's going to value those things when it comes to a figure. Which brands are the photographers going to appreciate? Off the top of my head, Hot Toys, Fans Toys, SH Figuarts, Figma, NECA, Gigapower, Takara Tomy, X-Transbots, DX9, Iron Factory, etc. And then you have another category, which is where I find myself, which is the display collector. My entire collection is built on this. Speaking of which, a lot of people have been asking about this empty shelf and what's going there. I have a couple ideas in mind, but I haven't decided yet. But I do like seeing all of the guesses and hypotheses in the comments. Hypotheses? I'm not sure what plural on that. Hypotheses, right? What am I, a scientist? What matters to me? First and foremost is sculpt. Second is paint. Third is articulation. And that's pretty much it. I need it to pose just enough to look incredible on a shelf. And once it's sitting on that shelf, I need the sculpt and paint to carry the presence of it for the appreciation. What's going to stand out to a guy like me? Hot Toys, statues. But you're thinking to yourself, statues have no posability. Correct. Because they've gone ahead and done that for you and put it in a bad pose. Takara Tomy at times, X-Transbots, Zeta, although with them we do sacrifice the paint most of the time, SH Figuarts, Storm Collectibles, Fans Toys, Play Arts Kai. So you take a guy like me and you throw a ton of accessories, a ton of gimmicks, and a super durable figure, and it doesn't necessarily do anything for me because those aren't the elements that become important to me. I'd rather a figure be fragile but beautiful than very standard looking and durable. Although I can appreciate the durability, just like I can appreciate the beauty, when it comes to my preference, when it comes to my intent, the fragile, beautiful figure checks that box heavier for me than the durable, basic looking one. And I think that's where a lot of problems come in with the fans regarding what is quote unquote good. Because just because something doesn't check your boxes doesn't make it good, just means that they're not looking for the same thing you're looking for. That's why Flames Toys is so incredible to me, even though it doesn't have the engineering to cause the transformation. It checks every box that I'm looking for. I'm not looking for a transformation necessarily. I can appreciate a well done transformation, but it's not what I'm looking for. Now, I think I'm vocal enough, and probably to an obnoxious extent, about what I'm looking for in this, that most people understand my point of view, and can even respectfully disagree sometimes because they know that they're looking for something different than what I am. But I would attempt to sell you on the idea that maybe you should take that same philosophy to other people that you encounter online, and perhaps approach a conversation where you can see the agreement is not in alignment and say, I can see why we don't agree because we're not looking for the same thing. But then of course there are those scenarios where one person is just right and another person is just wrong. Like when you're arguing with a person that thinks the Takara Hot Rod is better than the Fans Toys. Just kidding. Like to rustle or ruffle a few feathers. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.